Should Catholics be ascetic? Should Catholics live a penitential life focused on fasting and self-denial? Going all the way back, of course, to John the Baptist, our Lord, the apostles, and the early church fathers, fasting, penance, asceticism was always an integrated part of what it meant to be a follower of Jesus Christ. And I'm joined today with James Baxter. He's with Exodus 90, and we're going to talk about this program that's emerged over the last few years for men to rediscover what it means to be a follower of Christ through the path of asceticism. James, welcome to the show.
Dr. Marshall, hey, thanks so much for this opportunity. It's a joy to be with you.
Yes. So, before we talk about Exodus 90, being a Christian means that you carry a cross. It's always been part of the Gospels, and it seems that in the last 50, 60, 70 years, Christianity has become sort of soft. It's emotive, it's how you feel, it's emotions, and this whole idea of military language for the Christian life is seen as politically incorrect and something that we need to move beyond. What do you say to that?
Yeah, the truth is so few people know what asceticism is, and fewer can pronounce it. And that's kind of a sign of, a real lack in catechesis, in our Catholic faith. When we look even at the Jesuits, the whole frame for Ignatius's model is, as a society, is a sort of military and a militaristic frame, which resulted in the abundant fruitfulness of the order at the origin, right? But you're right. We've totally gotten away from that in the last 50 years or so. And, even when Exodus was, we'll get into this, I'm sure, when we were starting to share it, we actually had asked ourselves the question, is it worth it to try to redefine asceticism for people? Because it's so foreign. And at the end of the day, when you just take a look at the Catechism, when you look at the early church fathers, when you look at the saints throughout church history, it is everywhere. There's not a single saint who not only has, sufferings just through the natural course of their life, but, that doesn't take on voluntary, sufferings as well in order to, unite themselves more fully with Jesus Christ on the cross. So you're right. We've gotten away from that. And at the very least, Exodus is kind of a challenge to the status quo softness that most people experience today.
Yeah, I think when you go to a normal diocesan parish and you look around, if you go to a daily mass, 7, 8 a.m. in the morning, or even on a Sunday, you notice that in general, the men are missing. Now, I've noticed in traditional Latin Mass parishes, there's a greater representation of men and younger men and married men. But the men are missing. And I think this challenge that was issued by the church to take up your cross and be a serious disciple has cost us the men. We've lost men. They see it as a religion for old ladies. Beads and rosaries are for their grandmothers. And if you look at just even the calendar of the Catholic Church and you compare it to, say, how it was in 1900 and how it is today, you see that there used to be vigils, fasting vigils before the Feast of Apostles, before Christmas. December 24th was a fasting day. And Lent was serious. You go all the way back to the 1200s, no food till 3 p.m. all during Lent. No meat, including Sundays, all the way through Lent. This is serious stuff. And you have great saints and men like Thomas More, men who are wearing hair shirts and doing daily penances so that they can control the passions, strengthen their will, and become disciples of Christ. And men love to be called up. Sometimes, James, sometimes on Twitter, women will call me out saying, you're being, you shouldn't say that, talk that way to other guys. I'm like, look, you don't understand men. Men must be challenged. We do not get together for tea and hold hands in a group and talk about our emotions and become better people. That's not how God designed men. In fact, men are repelled by that. What challenges a man and moves him to action is getting kicked in the pants by his brothers. And Exodus 90 is great because it kind of builds that in a charitable way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're totally right. When you look at the average church today, the absence of men, and the thing that I would posit is that's precisely why we're going to see less and less children,
Hmm.
in the pews as the years go by. And this is fortunately empirical. So, the singular most predictive factor on whether or not a child will practice the faith, is the faithfulness of the father. And there's a super interesting study. I'm sure you've read this before, Dr. Marshall, out of Switzerland in the 90s, that actually showed that when both the father and mother are practicing the faith, there's about a 33% chance that those children would grow up to be regular Catholics. When the father doesn't, but the mother does, there's only a 3% chance. But in a really interesting spin, when the father practices and the mother does not, there's actually a 41% chance. It goes up
Yeah.
from when both parents are regular. So it's not to say anything about, not to denigrate or, say like the woman doesn't play a role in fostering the faith of a child. I just actually had my first child a few weeks ago, and I'm
Congratulations.
already experiencing, just how important and what an influence she is. Spending so much time with him every day, leading up to his baptism. But it is to say that men, there is not only a biological but a spiritual generativity to them that has been absolutely underestimated, but probably discouraged, over the last 50 years or so. And so, there's serious consequences for that. So we're so focused on men's formation, and we look at it as a task, as a part of evangelization today.
Yes.
It's not just to, give men something to do. It's no, like if we care about, the faith growing, in the next generations, it's critical that men kind of take responsibility as, the spiritual authority, and frankly, common priests of their household, which is just not, at all kind of the normal experience of things today. I'd also just say, as good as, the church does, at least formally, in talking about the roles of the sexes and their distinctions, I'm asked every single day, 15 times, like, where is Exodus for women? And why isn't this a women's thing as well? We do a terrible job of living out the truths that we hold, which is, this is an exercise for men, and it's very intentionally so. And most of the time, the women are when their men go through this, they're like, wow, yeah, I'm very glad you did. And this probably wasn't for me, but it was for you. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think going back to the study you mentioned, the reason that children become church attenders if the father is involved, and even more so if the mother is not a church attender, is a very basic principle that some people are shocked when they hear it. And that is, from the time the child is an infant till about the age of 10, the child is protected in the domestic space of the home. And the mother is the governess and the leader, providing nutrition, right? Even in her anatomy, she is built to protect and nourish this child as a small one. And you just had your first child, so you'll be living this now for the next many years. Once they reach the age of reason at 7 and begin to develop physically and get stronger, their new orientation in life, and this is perfect, this is how God wants it to be, their new orientation in life is to be outside the home, whether they're male or female. They're going to move out into the world, they're going to get married, they're going to have a religious vocation, a priesthood, whatever it is. And the person who represents the outside world and how to handle the world and its dangers and its challenges and its blessings and all that is the father. Who gives, and this is for sons and daughters. The sons look to their dad to see, how do I live out there where mom isn't? Dad shows me that.
Yeah.
Same with the daughter. Who gives away the daughter at the wedding? I know now with feminism, both do whatever, but traditionally it's the dad, because he is the guide outside the home. He's leading her to her new vocation as a wife in the wedding ceremony. So This is why. This is how God set it up. And when the father's not a practicing Catholic, he tells the children, when you go out into the world, you don't need God, you don't need mass, you don't need sacraments, right? You just need a television remote, right? And booze or whatever to sort of to numb yourself through the remaining decades of your life, and you get, people who are lacking in virtue. So what we're calling for and what Exodus 90 is doing so well is, men, your kids are looking to you, your wife's looking to you, even for yourself, even if you're not married. You have to transcend just your own comfort. And you have to show them, if you have children and a wife, show them what it means to live out in the world. And the world's full of challenges. So you have to have habituated virtue, prudence, justice, fortitude, temperance, faith, hope, charity, scripture, prayer, all these things, or you're going to fail and you're going to fall on your face.
Yeah. So in a little book called Leaving Boyhood Behind, a good friend of mine, Jason Craig, writes about how because men are not introducing their sons and daughters to the external world, it kind of leaves them in a perpetual state of adolescence, which we all experience on a daily basis as we interact with people in society who were so clearly not shown, obviously the virtues and how to live out here. So anyway, I'd recommend that for anybody. But when that initiation doesn't occur, you're right, you're left lost. Yeah. And when that faith isn't integrated into that introduction as well, it just seems like, this random thing on Sundays that for some reason we're doing, because we used to, or, whatever. In my own family, this is lived actually. So there's 4 brothers, 2, my father included, are very serious disciples. And for me, when I would wake up in the morning, I have this vivid memory of encountering my father praying in a chair in a corner, an hour in the morning. And that's what I would see every day as I woke up. And so it was just ingrained in me, like that's how a man starts his day. It's before God. And so when we look at the two brothers, my father included, all of us are, practicing the faith and living it out to the best of our ability. One's not so much in it. The kids, of course, are not going to be anywhere around it. The other brothers' kids are still young, so we'll see. But that study is very much enfleshed in my own family experience. And at the very least, just highlights how essential it is that men take that spiritual authority seriously, or there will be serious consequences. I mean, we can't just chalk this up to CCD groups to figure out for us.
Another temptation I've seen in some diocesan parishes is there's a recognition, okay, we've lost men. What do we do to get them back? And so there's a strategy of, okay, well, let's have a men's fellowship night, which I think is good, or let's get together and have some beers. Okay, that's good as well, or play softball or whatnot. And I think it's good to get guys together, but even those approaches, and I think it's good for parishes to do that. I'm not denigrating it. Even those approaches are missing the fundamental problem, and that is you're never going to get a guy to be going to Mass 52 Sundays a year just because he likes playing softball there or having beers with the guys. You're only going to inspire him and hook him into the sacraments if there's a real penitential transformation, a metanoia in his life. Right? So, even places that are recognizing, hey, we have a problem with the men coming, a lot of times the solutions that are put forward, although they are good, they're still not hitting at the root problem.
Right. And I mean, so that's just a problem, and it's not a holistic formation. It's not touching all the dimensions of what it means to be a man, and I think at the very least, Exodus is an integrated opportunity for you where your mind, where your will, where your affections are all touched, by this. This isn't just, you're not just reading along, but you are engaged in this fully, physically. And, when that happens in a group setting with other men, that is that hook, it can be that hook into the sacramental life of the church, necessary for salvation. But you're right, when it's just a softball game or whatever, it's like, well, I can do that anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Maybe I can play better softball with others.
Right.
So it's just so important that, again, it's not just these activities happening in a ecclesial space and calling that Christian fellowship. That's missing the mark.
Yeah. Okay, so we're here talking about Exodus 90, and we assume everybody knows what we're talking about. But I'm going to guess that although a good majority of my audience has heard me talk about it and knows that I do it, let's break it down for people. What is Exodus 90? It's obviously 90 days, but what is the commitment? What goes on in Exodus 90, James?
Yeah, so you make 3 commitments: to prayer, the practice of asceticism, and to a fraternity, a few other men. So the prayer component, simple 60 minutes a day of prayer, and we encourage you to spend at least 20 minutes in mental prayer a day. We ask that of everybody. So some guys are just not used to the silence. I can't tell you how many times we just get the question, like, I don't know what to do. And our response is, we do provide kind of a structure for that time in prayer, but it's, listen, man, you got to get acquainted with the silence. You've got to sit there and allow the Lord of glory to influence everything about you. And that's not just going to happen, in any other way. So kind of with that prayer component, you read through a passage from the book of Exodus and a reflection that, hopefully helps guide your mental prayer time every day. So that's the prayer component. The thing I would say about that is most guys are at the beginning, very full of anxiety, just sitting there. But by the end, I think they're just astonished by how present Christ can be when we've allowed him to be there, when we've created that space for him to speak and to move. And in fact, some people ask me, like, man, are you surprised that this has grown so quickly in such a short period of time? And there's a part of me that says, yes, I'm really surprised, but just in my own kind of contemplative experience, when you place yourself before the Lord, dynamic things happen. It's really not that surprising, the fruitfulness there. So the ascetic component, is what kind of, I guess, makes Exodus stand out. Everyone talks about the cold showers and laments them. I do too. We encourage the men to practice regular and intense exercise every week, get a full night's sleep, abstain from alcohol, desserts, sweets, eating between meals, soda and sweet drinks. So that's kind of the food components, in addition to fasting on Wednesday and Friday, as we do Ash Wednesday and Good Friday every year, as the church asks us to. So every Wednesday and Friday you commit to that. And then the next biggest thing, in addition to food, is kind of technology. So we offer a pretty healthy challenge, the idea that leisure can happen through a technological means. And so we say no television, sports, movies, video games, and the music you listen to should be lifting your soul to God and not dragging you down to the earth. So most of us are, even doing good work, can get stuck in, kind of the technological landscape in which we live. And Exodus can help to reorient, using technology as a tool. It's for most people inescapable, but you can get rid of more than you think, maybe, is what we like to say. Yeah. Additionally, we ask that make no major material purchases. So it's kind of a technology thing too, but don't go to Amazon.com to medicate your problems. Is something we say there. So those are the components, the ascetic components to this. So lastly, you commit to meeting with a fraternity one time per week at least. Structure for that meeting set. It's pretty liturgical. So it doesn't just evolve into kind of sharing whatever you feel like, but it should be, very, pretty regimented, to be honest. To provide an opportunity for accountability with the other men, but also encouragement. I think, in all my experiences with Exodus fraternities, as powerful as it is to see the working of grace in your own life, it is amazing when you see others that happening right before your eyes in a way you can't get around. And that's deeply motivating for your own metanoia. So people can say, like, I don't have time for all that stuff. But when you commit to the ascetic component of this, you're overwhelmed by how much time you have.
Exactly.
And that can be hard to to accept. I mean, there is a kind of an addiction to busyness that we all experience, and even my work. I was just talking about this with a coworker. It's like I got like 15 different boards of different buckets of things that I'm doing at a given time. But the truth is like when I'm really living what we practice, there's time for everything I need. And that's tough though, because there's something about being busy that keeps us from the silence, that keeps us from confronting ourselves and our reality, the dimensions to us that can be challenging, but also from God, who unfortunately, though, is our Father, just can kind of get abstract and make us uncomfortable, but it doesn't need to be that way. And that's the challenge we're offering.
So I want to run through a day on Exodus 90. I've done Exodus 90 twice. And James, if I make a mistake, interrupt me and correct me. So you wake up, you take a shower, it's cold. Take a cold shower. Actually, you should wake up and probably pray 3 Hail Marys for holy purity and have your morning prayers. Take a shower, it's cold. For breakfast, you're not eating sweets. So no donuts, anything like that, right? And you get in the car to go to work, no music, no sports talk radio. And this was, when I was talking with my group in Exodus 90, this is one of the most kind of shocking differences in our lives, is just commuting and driving in silence. I'm not one to listen to like contemporary Christian music, so that's out for me. Yep. I usually would just go silent in my car, just keep everything off. And man, your mind explores and reaches and thinks about things and remembers things that have been shut off.
Yeah. Which
is really good, really important. I think this is one of the things that struck all of us the most. When you're at work, if they put cookies or candies out or whatever, you don't eat them. In fact, all the guys that I've done Exodus 90 with have all leaned out. I'm sure that's pretty common.
Very common, yeah.
Because you're not drinking booze, you're not eating candy, you're not having cake, you're not having donuts, you're not having syrup or any of these plagues that we have in our standard American diet. So you're eating better, which leads to sleeping better. We'll get to that. You work through your day, you come home in silence yet again. And the distractions of sports, music, and even the shopping. Like someone will say, oh yeah, you should get this, and you go on Amazon and that's not an option. And so you just have a lot more reflection, and I think you become more of a philosopher, whether you're taking a philosophy course or not. You just become more reflective about your own life and what life is all about. You come home, you don't get to pour yourself a drink or pop open a beer. And we also found in our group that since we're not watching TV and we're not doing any of the things that normally sort of take away our distractions, we all kind of said, hey, you know what? I've started reading books again every night to my kids, or I'm spending more time putting them to bed, praying with them. So there is, you start of making more time available, and you start filling in the cracks with good, wholesome things, especially with the family. And then you have a dinner, no dessert, and you can't watch TV. There's no let's put on a movie. So you end up sitting and talking to your wife, and there was actually a little bit of friction. Maybe you can speak to this, James. And some guys in the group, the wives were like, hey, I've had a long day. I want to sit and watch a movie with you or TV or binge watch something. And the guys are like, well, I'm on Exodus. I can't do that. So sometimes a little bit of a friction there. What say you on that? How does that work out?
Yeah, so, the origin of this whole thing was a seminary formation experience that a mentor of mine started. So the frame of, marriage and family wasn't there for the first groups. So when we released it, I was newly discerned out of the seminary. And so, to be honest with you, didn't think much of it. But over time, you quickly realize, there's a lot of friction there. So now in our onboarding process for guys as they're beginning Exodus, great communication with the spouse and what this entails is important. So much so that we say, if you don't have her blessing for this, and this is just going to cause, constant argumentation, this isn't the time for it. Maybe revisit it at another time. Most spouses who are in touch with their femininity are like, you know what, let's give this a shot. And they appreciate more time with you. They appreciate greater communication. They appreciate not seeing your sports team so many times a week or whatever. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. They appreciate that new time. But to be honest with you, for spouses that are, struggling with their own forms of dependency and lack of spirituality, they can hate Exodus, to be honest. And there's not a lot I can really do for that. So we just say, hey, if you don't have that blessing, I probably not now. But so that communication is essential. The other thing we do say is, it definitely affects how you eat, when you're eating, etc. And if your spouse forgets and puts something on the table that shouldn't be there, like a meat on Wednesday or something, you just eat it. Like it's your Exodus, it's not hers. Right. And it's not meant to be this thing we parade around at all. So,
that's how we did it. We would have our weekly meeting and be like, hey, I got, pork chops on Wednesday night, and just, that's what it is. You don't tell your wife, I'm not eating dinner tonight because you made this.
Right.
So you just roll with the punch. And that's true. I think in charity and all Christian penances, you just, unless it's under canon law, like meat on a Wednesday or Good Friday or something like that, or you're not doing a penance on Friday throughout the year, you can roll with things and be charitable. So I think most women and wives, they're like, the kids are in bed at 8:30 and you don't want to watch TV, you just want to sit here next to me. It's kind of a win. I think that's kind of a win. Also, another thing that all of us noticed on Exodus is we all became readers again.
Yeah.
We weren't stuck on our phone scrolling or whatever, or checking scores or shopping or whatever, looking at, a rifle that we've been wanting to buy or whatever. It's just not an option.
Right.
And so we found ourselves at night, it's like, well, I'm not tired yet. There's probably another hour. I'll pick up that book, that spiritual book that everybody told me I should be reading. I'll read it. Or, I've been enjoying reading a little bit of scripture every day. I'll just finish reading the Gospel of Luke.
Yeah. My father is a chemical engineer, wrapping up his career, retiring next month, actually. And at a big firm. Anyway, he really got away from reading entirely since college, and felt like he needed to do Exodus because I've been preaching this for years now, and that was the thing he said. He's like, I just read 9 books in 90 days, and I don't know if he could have counted 2 or 3 books he had read in 30 years, and what a weird thing that is for such a, at least the speak given to the importance of education on the level of our society. Are we reading? Like, are we really entering into the liberal arts? No, we're not at all. And we're getting dumb. And, so I was just talking to a priest friend of mine last week. I don't say this either as an expert, because it's like, there are times where I get away from the reading I need to be doing. And I was with him and I was like, there are things that are happening that I used to be able to see with a better Catholic vision. I could see, invisible realities that are like, I'm not wrapping my head around things as clearly anymore. And he just looked me in the eyes and he said, and he smiled. This is a professor of mine. He says, it's so common, as you kind of get out into the hustle and bustle of lay life and work life, to get away from the reading you need to be doing. But the tragedy is that the problems of our time are primarily intellectual. Mm-hmm. And you need to take this seriously. We've been killing unborn children forever, but to rationalize it like we do today, that's a new philosophical dilemma that needs confrontation on an intellectual level. But if we're not reading, we can't. We just kind of devolve into saying things emotionally or whatever. So anyway, I say that's a benefit of this, but in my own life, I constantly need to return to that habit, because without making strides in our kind of intellectual formation, we're not going nowhere. We're going backwards, for sure. So.
Yep. Another thing that we got into was fitness. I
Yeah.
can't remember. Is that a required part?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we leave it on you just because men come into Exodus are in such different places, but we say regular and intense exercise 3 times a week. That's what we
Yeah.
say. So
Yeah. So we were all doing like strongest 5x5. I mean, we got pretty jacked, James. I ain't gonna lie. And we would get together. We would challenge each other, and we'd say, okay, man, watch my form. I want to put an extra 30 pounds on my squat. And deadlifts. And it's funny. I saw a picture from 2016 when I was doing Exodus 90, and I was like, man, I was leaned down pretty strong. I need to get back into this, man. And it reminded me of just how intense that was, because again, you have a lot more free time. You're eating well. Eating well means you have more energy. You're not loaded down with carbs and sugar. You're leaning out, and that's just it's like lots of little wins that push you to bigger wins. And then the other thing that we all notice, besides we're reading more, we have more personal reflection, we're getting stronger, we're getting leaner, is we were just sleeping better. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was not being on TV and computers and iPhones, the better diet, prayer, going to confession, clean conscience, all kinds of things. Everything was just better. And this is probably how our grandparents and great-grandparents were. They weren't all stressed out with all this stupid stuff, and they were eating way better.
Yeah, for people who talk about this being so unrealistic, I'm like, well, turn back the clock. Yeah. Not even 100 years.
Yeah.
And this looks a lot like life. Exactly. Especially if you're integrated into the life of the church about 100 years ago. Like, this looks a lot like that. Yeah. So don't spare me. Give me a break. I'll just say this, tell you a story. So I've been living, thinking, breathing this stuff for the last 5 years. And when I moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana, I didn't necessarily want to go take Exodus to my parish. I just wanted to go receive, enter into the life of the parish. Well, I'm sitting there one Sunday last year. This is about the time a lot of the scandal stuff with McCarrick was breaking out again. And as a response to this, he was my pastor was so agitated. Obviously, everyone's so agitated. He's like, you know what? I want to do something. I want to offer this agitation. I want to channel this in a way that's going to benefit my life with God and the faith of our community. So we asked every able-bodied man in the parish to do Exodus. And I'm just sitting there listening to this. And I'm just like, this is unbelievable, because someone had invited him into a fraternity. Fast forward a year, he's given a talk at our parish called How Exodus Changed My Life. And the thing that he shared with the parish was that a few years ago, he set these goals for where he would like to be on a fitness standpoint, on a weight standpoint. And he said what he was telling himself was, maybe in 10 years I'll get there. So he wanted to lose 5 to 10 pounds a year or something like this. And this whole talk was structured around the fact it took him 90 days to get where he wanted to go, not 10 years. And you visibly, he'll walk around the diocese now. No one recognizes him. He's been in parishes for years, very well known, very loved pastor in our local church, and people literally don't recognize him anymore because he's so he looks like a fully engaged, he's lost all the weight, and I would just say the experience of listening to him as a man and as a husband and father in his flock, he's just so much stronger in his exhortations to us. He's so clearly much more rooted in prayer as well, and it's an amazing thing for this to serve my local community in that way. So yeah, that experience of dropping pounds, it's common. The numbers 20 is what we hear most often, about 20 pounds. 20 pounds.
No.
Yeah, he dropped 55 or 60.
55 pounds in 90 days?
So it started the process. It didn't round out until the following months. So not all in 90 days.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so not
Yeah, I mean, if
uncommon at
you
all.
cut alcohol, sugar, sweets, and all that, you are definitely going to lose over 90 days at least 5 pounds of fat.
Yeah,
Easy.
yeah,
And then you start doing fitness and working out, and
yeah,
and now, like, all the guys in my group, my fraternity group, they were all into fitness. So, we were, it's part of what we talk about. We talk about, and then we'd meet up and we'd lift together, or work out together and encourage one another. And that's good too. I mean, as men, we need to be attractive for our wives. We need to have strong arms and legs and backs to pick up our kids and throw them around the swimming pool and play sports, and all of that's important. We just because you got married 20 years ago doesn't mean you get to let yourself go. That's not charitable. You
yeah,
need to be strong physically, mentally, and spiritually for your family.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you need to be the whole man. You need to
Yeah.
show up, and your spouse. Something we'll hear more and more. So this has actually been really interesting. Now that we've done a lot more to help married men get into Exodus, we hear so much more about like marriages being saved
Mm.
because they're on the brink for no other reason that the man is just so off the charts. I mean, so either focused on work or his hobbies or his sports. He's just so detached from family life that it's just not what their spouse signed up for. That's not what they thought they were getting into. And it's not to justify ever walking away or anything like that. It's just to say, this is playing such a critical part in returning the man to the fullness of his manhood, and the effect that has on a family is impossible to speak the full bounds of. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. My wife, all of our wives liked it. Though I will say that in the first go round, all of our wives, within the first 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, all felt a little bit uncomfortable about it. They
yeah.
see these
Tell me
radical
more about that.
changes. They
Yeah,
see that when everybody, wants to scoop out ice cream on Sunday, you don't. They see that you're not watching movies. They see all this, and then they also see that you're kind of having this new friendship every week with these guys. It's kind of like my husband is starting to go through a very radical change, and the wives are like, "What's going on?" We don't know exactly what it is. Maybe you know what it is. I'm sure you've seen it more, but then after that, the wives were like, "Wow, this is really awesome. I like the man that he's become." But
yeah.
there's a little bit of a shuffling of the deck there in the first few weeks. Have you experienced that talking to other groups?
Well, for sure, because they don't know what does that mean for them. Like where are you going to be by the end of this?
Mm-hmm.
How is this going to reorient how we spend our time, what we talk about?
Right.
What are our goals? Things as practical as financial goals to what kind of vacations do we take? There's just a lot of threats.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, like it shouldn't be that way.
Right.
Like when we really into our sonship with the Father, everything is going to be better,
Yeah.
even if there are pretty hard shifts. So I think there's just some of that unknown. But again, by the end, it's like you're so much more focused on them that how do you not respond to that in a good way? There's there's a man in particular who stands out who, I mean, they were just from a very affluent background, but just on the not doing well and not going anywhere great. And it was a big threat because it just changes, like, how they do vacations, when, with who, all that kind of stuff. But, it was only through Exodus they could just start to see what medicated lives they had started to live, and they were able to get into marriage recovery after that, and are really on a great path right now. Praise God. But so I think those changes can just, kind of signal some unknowns, like what's going to change here. The encouragement is just like nothing but greatness will happen when we grow closer to the Lord. The only other thing I would say is men are so alone today and isolated, and it can maybe seem like a threat to have your man in a fraternity, but there's wisdom and encouragement that those other men can offer them that a spouse can't. And a good brother is going to actually inspire you so much more to return home and be that better man. It's not going to be a threat to the marriage at all. And yeah, it's just something I imagine. I don't know about your local parish experience, but most of the guys that walk through the parish on an average Sunday, yeah, maybe you're greeted, maybe you're volunteering and doing some service, but are you known by anybody at all? Probably not. And that's I can't be helpful for your life at home either. So
Yeah. Yeah. And you think about it from the wife's point of view. She's known her husband for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. All of a sudden, she sees radical changes in his diet, in his fitness, in his behavior regarding media, computers, music. I mean, it's a pretty radical change that happens. And at first, I think, oh, it's good, it'll be good for him. But then when she sees radical changes, it's like, well, who is he and who is he becoming? But I think once you get into the process and she sees him leaning out, getting stronger, more time with the kids, more time with her, right? Bad habits going away. She's like, okay, I like. There are a lot of changes, but I like it. It's
yeah,
adding up to something good.
yeah. About when was that point of departure, I guess, or change for her? When did that happen for you?
I think the first 2 weeks, yeah,
Yeah,
14 days or so. But then after
yeah,
that, fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I think another part of it too, maybe not for mine, but I think for other men is it's sort of an implicit challenge to her to step up. She may not like that.
Right.
It may
Yeah,
be kind of, wait, are you saying that I shouldn't be eating dessert
yeah.
every night? Is that the implicit judgment here that she may not like? So
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Every couple has a
Yeah. No,
different set of
that's a good point
expectations.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think that's where good communication comes in, and really letting your spouse know why you want this right now.
Mm,
So
mm,
we have a whole different exercise at the beginning now in terms of really identifying why, what's the reason, and making sure that reason's very defined and at the service of God and others. And when you've got that well set why, it's hard for your spouse. Oh, it's typically revolves around just being a better husband and father. So that's what it becomes, and that kind of, I think, prevents it from being this huge threat, because obviously there's nothing implicitly wrong about eating a dessert, at all, or watching a show, but it is a challenge, I guess, to the medicated life that most of us live today, and just how normal that is, unfortunately. So, yeah.
yeah. James, can we talk about we talked about wives there, but can we talk about the psychological process and struggles and hardships that happen at increments along the 90 days? Because it's something that I've done Exodus 90 2 times. I did a little Exodus 30, but I'm not saying you should not do an Exodus 30. You should do an Exodus 90. This was just like a tune-up. But during the 90 days, it seems like both times with all the guys, we went through a similar process of, times of dejection and discouragement and wanting to give up, to times of victory. And it kind of seemed that we went through all these passages around the same time. And I wrote a testimonial for you guys. You sent it to me beforehand. What year? That was 2016, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
3 years ago.
Three years ago.
And I wrote, I'll just read part of it here.
Please.
So my journey through Exodus 90 began with the first 10 days of sheer joy of something new and refreshing. Silence, reflection, new fraternity with guys in my group. Around day 20, the disciplines felt unbearable and unrealistic. So, this was me just saying, cold showers, come on, I can have a cookie with my daughter. This is unrealistic, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so it was at this time that I kind of thought about quitting. And other
Yeah.
guys too were like, I don't know, do we really want to do this? Meet every week, and I was craving distractions.
Yeah.
This is it's kind of cool at first, kind of like when you start off at Lent. The first week you're all hardcore and you got all these rules, but after you get, or if you do a New Year's resolution, first week or two is great, but once you start getting into the third week, I just wanted to be distracted.
Yeah.
I just wanted to turn my mind off and listen to some music in the car and just go numb while I drove, or put on a movie and for an hour and a half not think about anything. And that was kind of, moving into week 3. Is that normal, or that just
Yeah,
us?
super common. So I sent this to you today because I was so struck by it because you were really one of the first groups through Exodus in our first year, and obviously it's really moved since then. And what's been so interesting is how so many of the things that you commented on we observe at this point thousands of times. So it's not always just 10 days, but 2 weeks or so of just like, wow, this is so great. I've got so much time. I'm way more focused at work. I'm leaving work earlier because I'm done for the day. If that's the, kind of job you have. Yeah, I'm talking to my spouse again, and I'm reading. It's really, really exciting. But you're right. There comes a point where and if you're really committing to it, there comes a point where you just want to quit. And unfortunately, it's not a very short period of time. I mean, it's weeks of just, am I really going to finish this out? Because, Lent is 40 days and you've been through 40 days and you have 50 more to go. Yeah. So that's hard. That's a struggle. And I think that men that are really entering into this, even good men with good formation, have a point where it's just like, I'm not sure that I want to keep this up. And so we got a cool grant to kind of study the dynamics of the 90-day process and what would happen in men's lives. And men would start in 2 places. Guys who had been preparing for this were really excited about it, were leading groups, they on this thrill, this high at the beginning. Other guys who had been invited, who are there because their friends are there, maybe at a little bit of a lower point. But things flatten out at day 40 and 50, where like the excitement of being in this is totally dead.
Yes.
Like it's just gone. And that's the time, I think, where your prayer has got to carry you forward. And typically where things really start to happen for you, that's not just on the level of a natural consolation because you have your life back. It's more on the level of, what does this mean for me? Like where is Christ calling me? We talk about freedom all the time here. So you're encountering your freedom, but it's not just for the sake of, having it or choosing it and being selfish. That freedom's at the service of others. It's about love, and so where is Christ calling you to love? And maybe that's in a new direction, but maybe it's just recommitting. And all of that happens on the interior during that period of time. But what we observe closer to like 60 to 70 is you're towards the end. You're these habits are being formed if you're really committed to this. Your brain is very much resetting. You're thinking differently. And you're almost not wanting it to end. It's almost like, well, this is just the springboard. The thing we hear a lot is, by the end, I'm realizing this is more like the Christian life than not. Yeah. And that's the big point of this. We're not trying to just, pump out a P90 Exodus for Catholics or something like this. That's not what it is. It's meant to be a foundation for, hopefully a new life in Christ and with new values that should become much more important to you. Because at the end of the day, this is what the church has prescribed for us, but that we've gotten away from. And it works. It works every time. Prayer, asceticism, fraternity, they don't fail you. They won't fail you. And that's because This is the path laid out for us by the Lord, who then modeled it with his apostles, who then taught this, and this is the church, frankly. And so those are some of the dynamics, I guess, of the 90-day process. The only thing I'd liken to, so some people ask us, like, why are you calling this a spiritual exercise? So that's very intentional, and partly it's because of these common ebbs and flows. And it reminds me very much, I told you this earlier, that I did a 30-day silent retreat, the Ignatian exercises, many years ago. And obviously it's a much more concentrated, intense time of silence with much more prayer and way less distractions. But there are breaking points in that retreat. And things like hell become a lot more real for you than they've ever been. And, but through persistence, through perseverance, through committing to something you said you'd do, the Lord of glory shows up, and you arrive at that throne, and full of resolve, to serve him and to love him, and it's not the same thing, but in so many ways, that's what we believe we're doing is sharing the spiritual exercise for men that can be accomplished in the hustle and bustle of life today.
Yeah, I know our group, I think we had a meeting, it was around day 38, 39, 40, right around there, and we were all pretty dejected at that point because our discussion that day was, we just finished a Lent, 40 days, and we have 50 more to go. We just did a Lent, and we're not halfway finished. And we were all pretty discouraged and talking about, can we keep going, And we all encouraged each other and did keep going. But I think that was the absolute low point, was moving into day 40. Because you're like, man, our Lord in the wilderness, he only went 40 days. We're going 90. And of course, our Lord was doing no food, no water. Of course, he had no media or anything silly like that. But when you're having self-pity, you think of stupid stuff. So, yeah, I mean, that was the point for me and for others. And I remember you start counting the days like you're in prison. And I remember, around 39 being ejected and then getting to day 45, 46. And I'm like, okay, we hit the halfway mark. We're only halfway. I imagine, I've never run a marathon, but I imagine that's what it must be like when you're feeling tired and exhausted and you've got blisters forming and you see the halfway mark. It, for some reason, wasn't encouraging. But like you said, and I wrote this, I said in what I wrote you 3 years ago, however, around days 50 to 60, our team became more naturally habituated to the disciplines. One can only understand this by experiencing it. A sense of resolve and peace entered into my life, and by day 90, I did not want it to end. I'd become a new man, and I sincerely liked the man who I had become by day 90. So around day 50 to 60, and people say it takes 21 to 40 days to habituate anything in your life. So if you want to stop picking your nose, it's going to take 21 to 40 days. Stop smoking cigarettes, 21 to 40 days. Working out regularly, 21 to 40 days. Breaking bad eating habits. So I'm guessing, I don't know if you've done research on this as well, James, but it seems that the habituation and the actual delight and love for the disciplines didn't really start happening in my life or in our group's life till around days 50 to 60.
Yeah, that's right. So that's super common. The whole 90-day framework for this came out of Father Doris, the priest who started this, trying to understand, different recovery models. And he just kept encountering in his research the significance of a 3-month period of time and 90 days. And that's why even colloquially, you think of the AA adage, 90 meetings, 90 days, that kind of a thought. The thing that we've, been bent on is, this isn't just, you don't just jump through some hoop for a period of time and things are better for you. In fact, we were talking about this a little bit before, but, Exodus is not an addiction program as such at all. And I think in some ways we can only do a better job for those guys in the throes of addictions as they're coming to Exodus, really doing a better job of of sending them to the resources they need, probably with therapists and a lot more help than this can offer. But at the same time, like, yes, abstinence and habit formation happens, and on the level of the brain, you see this in new pathways that are truly formed, and new ways of thinking and new responses to situations that you wouldn't have responded to before. So again, I mean, we're pretty clear, it's not just a magic bullet here, but it can be a springboard. And we talk to guys all the time who, for whatever reason, they came to Exodus, whatever idol they were suffering through or with. It's a springboard to a new life. And it's truly amazing. I mean, I was talking to a young man even just last night, he just said he had been trying everything for the struggle like he was working through. And he's like, well, at the very least, I'll try Exodus. And it was it, and he's on his way to the Dominicans now. And he never would have been doing that, without this. He was so resistant to responding to religious life, so resistant for years. But just in being broken down, being newly vulnerable to the Lord, he was finally able to just like, okay, yeah, let's move forward from here. So anyway, that's right.
That's incredible. So how many men have gone through Exodus 90? What's the current status, and what are you seeing, or what have you learned since you started all this up several years ago?
Yeah, so the first year we had a few hundred guys, and you were in that group, and truthfully, we didn't think much of it. At the beginning, I thought doing a favor for a friend. That was it. That's kind of what I thought about it. Within 90 days to Easter 2017, we added like 1,500 men in a few days. And I was just like, what is going on? I literally couldn't believe what I was seeing. And the truth was, the guys that were there the first year shared it clearly, shared their testimonies, found new groups, and made their way forward. I never expected guys to do Exodus a second time. And that's true, proven not to be the case at all. And then we've just been kind of on this massive multiplication effect. And it's been very humbling to watch. The truth is that guys are so grateful to experience freedom and what it means for them, that when that happens, you just have to share that in the form of testimony. And that's why it grows. We're a small little nonprofit, and this whole project should have broken so many times. It never should have worked. And it's just been amazing that it's the benefit that the men receive. It's the promise we make of freedom in Christ that ultimately moves it forward and grows it. So last year we welcomed about 12,000 new men, bringing about total impact to over 20,000 men. So that's where things stand today. The other thing I didn't know about Exodus was, is this an American Catholic thing? Is this something that the universal church will really take to? Obviously, spiritualities don't appeal everywhere, but the good ones seem to, or something like that. And I never knew. And we found out not so long ago that 25% of our men this past year were outside of the United States, which was really exciting to us. We just want to continue to do what we do. I would say this, I'm sure you've experienced this, Dr. Marshall, but when you experience a success, all kinds of shiny objects show up. Hey, go do this thing, go try this, where's your women's program, whatever. And we've been blessed to just stay focused on what we do. We free men. And that happens through this spiritual exercise. And for us, we're just trying to share that with as many men as we can. So that's what we're working on.
Well, fantastic. So when we wrap up here, and we'll close in a prayer. We forgot to open in prayer, so we'll close in our prayer.
Great.
How can guys get started? Now, a great way to do Exodus 90 is to extend your Lent and do a lead up to Easter. So you guys have picked the date for everyone, and that date is?
January 13th. It's a Monday. Monday this year. It's you start that day, day 1. Day 91 will be Easter Sunday. So that is the probably 80% of our guys come in that period of time every year. So that's kind of the day to hold up. That kind of couples New Year's resolutions with a profound experience of Lent that culminates in the newness of life and the resurrection, Easter Sunday.
So guys need to get a group of, what's your recommended number? The first time we did it, we only had 3.
Okay, we recommend groups a little bit bigger than that. 5 to 7 is what we say, mostly because, just to be transparent, we expect guys to drop off. We kind of expect. We were the first year.
We didn't know anybody. Yeah. We could only we only had 3.
Yeah, so we say groups a little bit bigger than that.
Good.
And 5 to 7. When you can get your priest to kind of serve as a director, that's ideal. That's not always possible with how it's grown. For priests listening to, the common life's not lived, especially with diocesan priests today, not in most places, which is super unfortunate, and can kind of lend to a sort of island mentality. So we really encourage priests who are craving fraternity to use Exodus as a springboard for that with other priests in their area, or even priests from seminary, friends that they had in the past, to just get them in good, a good fraternity with focused on intentional prayer and not gossiping about the bishop or whatever it is. So that's the other encouragement that we would make. In terms of getting started, if you have questions about it, you want to see testimonials, some of the research we've done, you can take a look at exodus90.com. Exodus, we distribute in a mobile application. So download it in your app store, either on Google Play or the App Store, iOS. And from there, you can just start inviting men to join your group. You set your start date, and then there's a kind of an onboarding process of, really making sure that this is the right time. We encourage men to really pray over this, to know what it entails. And we've talked about how intense it is. I would just say very normal guys with not a lot of formation have found a lot of fruit in it too. So I don't want you to be discouraged from taking it up at the same time, but know what you're getting into. You wouldn't take a 3-month trek in the wilderness without preparation. We encourage you not to do that with this either. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody check out Exodus 90. There's the app, the download. That's the best way, you say, James, get the app.
Yes, that's the best way. If you want to go offline or you don't have a smartphone, 100% understand that. When you create your account, you can just get the book and you don't have to mess with the application. Right. Most men choose to, but that option is for you too.
So game plan coming up here, guys. January 13th. Get 5 to 7 guys. Get the app. Do it. It will change your life. You will be a better man for your wife, for your children, for your work, for your vocation. And you can only understand it if you go through it. So I'd encourage you to give it a shot at least one time in your life. Do the Exodus 90 and rediscover what it means to be an ascetic Christian, a penitential Christian following Jesus Christ. That's the most important thing here, is that you reconnect with Christ and just cut off completely all these distractions and get to know Christ on a deep, deep level. Exodus 90. James, thanks so much for coming on. You want to end in prayer with me?
Please, Dr. Marshall. Thank you.
All right. So we'll end with the Ave Maria, asking Our Lady to inspire men and to help them through their Exodus 90 if they choose it. And then we'll do the Gloria Patri, the Glory Be, also praising God for all this. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus,
nunc et at hora mortis nostrae. Amen. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. All right, everybody, check it out. Exodus 90. You get the app. Check out their website. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe it. And thank you for all your support on Patreon at patreon.com/Dr. Taylor Marshall. And we'll see you in videos to come. Godspeed.
Cheers.